So finally, let's talk about the safety briefing just for a second. I think we're pretty much on schedule. We'll have time for some questions. Some flying myths. The front of the aircraft is safer than the back of the aircraft. Not necessarily. In fact, there is no safest seat in most cases, although the turbulence may be less noticeable in the forward seating than in the back. Sometimes you're in a really long aircraft. Remember the old DC-8s where you could actually sit in the back and the airplane tail would be fishtailing a little bit. Aircraft struck by lightning will crash. That's not true. The aircraft are all certified and must meet a lot of tests to protect the electronic system, the fuel lines, and the fuel tanks. Larger aircraft are safer than small airplanes. That's not true. There is no basic safety difference between the two types of airplanes. Are we docking already? Engine loss will cause an aircraft to fall out of the sky, and we talked about that. Aircraft have a big glide ratio, even jet aircraft that look heavy. Air pockets and turbulence can destroy the airplane. Again, that's not true. In fact, pockets of air do not, in effect, exist. What you have is wind shear sometimes, and because of that, you have some turbulence. Noises such as clunks and whirring and vibrations on the ship, that sort of thing can happen, but most of the time they're normal. Like I said, it's very important that you raise the gear on takeoff for max speed and get the gear down, for instance, and you will hear the hydraulic pumps operating to get that to happen. Okay, what you must know when you're flying an airplane. I know it's real easy to just ignore the flight attendants because we've heard the speeches 1,000 times, but there's some things that you really need to be concerned about. Don't always assume that this airplane is the same one you flew last time. It wouldn't hurt for a second to pull out the safety briefing card and know what type of airplane you're on, and especially know where your emergency exits are. This is probably the most important thing you need to do, is you need to count the number of seats between you and the nearest exit. Now, this doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be able to exit that particular area because, as I said, it depends on the situation. But if you know in a situation where you may have smoke how many seats there are between you and the emergency exit, then you're able to get out when sometimes it may have been impossible. And don't forget the floor level lighting that's available. Keep your seatbelt fastened. Even when it's fairly smooth, it's very, very important that you do keep your seatbelt fastened because you never know when you might encounter some turbulence. And there's been some people that break their neck at times because of that. If you sit next to an emergency exit or close to an emergency exit, obviously you are closer to getting out of the airplane. Nowadays, as you know, they are starting to charge for those seats for several reasons. The room that it affords you to have and that sort of thing. But if you can, that's not a bad way or place to sit. But just be willing to operate the door, know how it's done. Generally, you just pull the handle and just lay the door down over the seats. That's the easiest way to do it. Normally, they're only 40, 50 pounds, so it's usually not an issue. And besides, your adrenaline is probably going to be working for you. If you're going over water, obviously you're not going to have a life drill on the airplane like we did here in the ship, but it's important to know where your life vest is located. So physically, search for it. And it's generally under the seat in a little door or what have you. So be sure you know where it is so you can get it in an emergency. If the oxygen masks deploy, there is a little lanyard. When you pull down the mask, there's a little pin that should disengage. If it doesn't, you'll need to pull the pin or pull on the lanyard to make sure it does come down so the oxygen will flow. And of course, they say this a lot, but don't forget, you need to put your oxygen mask on yourself before helping someone else or helping a child, because you're no good to your child if you're incapacitated there. Again, if your emergency exit is blocked, your emergency exit of choice is blocked, then don't forget there's other emergency exits. And a lot of people in an emergency situation will revert to the exits they came in on. So you'll find, historically, they find that most of the people will try to exit through the main cabin entry door because that's the way they got into the aircraft. So that may not be the best choice for you. So it's very, very important that you think about that prior to it happening.